Alright everyone, hello and welcome into what I would like to call a late night brainstorming session between myself and you, the audience. I'm going to need your help and assistance tonight in this video to try to figure out this little conundrum that I believe the Minnesota Vikings are going to find themselves in over the course of the next week to week and a half. So what is this puzzle that I am alluding to? Allow me to explain the scenario. So if you haven't heard, and I'm sure you have because you're here, that the next head coach of the Minnesota Vikings is none other than Kevin O'Connell, the current offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. And I emphasis on the word current because the Rams are still in the playoffs. They will be participating in the Super Bowl against the Bengals, which is next week. So that means the Vikings have to wait for that game to conclude before that Kevin O'Connell can take over his duty as the next head coach of the Minnesota Vikings and begin assembling his coaching staff. So we have to wait at the very latest until February 14th for the press conference to happen, the introduction to be official, and then he can sit down, get to work, and start assembling a staff, and then go on from there. So herein lies the problem. We have to wait. Every other team in the league is currently not interviewing or waiting on a candidate for a Super Bowl team, the Bengals or the Rams, to be finished with their season so that they can hire their next guy. We are the only ones that are currently doing that. So that might actually put us behind the eight ball a little bit in terms of what sort of candidates are going to be left over once the dust settles for Kevin O'Connell to hire and put on his coaching staff. So the sort of point of departure for all of this tonight is this tweet that was put out about 20 hours ago by Jason La Canfora, who speculated that a name he has been hearing associated with the next defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings is none other than Mike Pettine. And as a person who lives in Browns territory, I'm sort of familiar with Mike Pettine. Jason La Canfora, he gets a lot of stuff wrong, tries to be first a lot, so he was the one that said that Doug Peterson was going to be getting an interview, and then that never happened. So I take this with a grain of salt, but it did spark my interest because we haven't had this conversation yet. All the other teams actively filling out their coaching staff. I think there's only two teams that have yet to actually hire a head coach. Jacksonville hired Doug Peterson today. Rick Spielman is going to be there. Weird aside real quick. Rick Spielman is going to be like some front office guru for the Jacksonville Jaguars this season, allegedly. And then they bring in Doug Peterson. What a weird franchise that is. But that might be a problem for Kevin O'Connell. There might not be very many candidates left to choose from. So I think we can do better than Mike Pettine. So that's our job right now. Let's brainstorm. Leave in the comments some names that you want to see to be on this coaching staff once Kevin O'Connell takes over. Now, remember, we do have a few positions that are currently open. We don't have an offensive coordinator, even though likely we can assume that Kevin O'Connell is going to be the play caller, but you still need an offensive coordinator. We're going to need a quarterbacks coach. We lost that guy. We're going to need an offensive line coach. We're going to need a special teams coordinator. We lost Ryan Ficken to the Chargers, if you haven't heard that news already. So there's a lot of jobs that are going to be needed to be filled, and there's no telling if he's going to retain anybody that has yet to jump ship from the current coaching staff for the Vikings. There's still a lot of names that are still in place that I haven't heard any reports or speculation about them going and seeking greener pastures. Is he going to keep Patterson as a defensive coordinator? Maybe. Is he going to keep Adam Zimmer as a defensive coordinator? Hell no. There will not be co-defensive coordinators during the Kevin O'Connell era for the Minnesota Vikings. So I think we can kiss that whole scenario goodbye. But who's going to be left? Are we going to actually be able to sway Patrick Graham to leave the New York Giants and be our defensive coordinator? I don't know. I have a tough time believing that because he's getting job offers for the same position elsewhere around the league. So that might be a difficult pull. The guy that's in the thumbnail on the video that you clicked on is Vic Fangio, former head coach for the Denver Broncos. We all had starry-eyed dreams of glory that potentially he could come on board with Jim Harbaugh, and then the offensive coordinator would be Pep Hamilton. Remember all those conversations about 72 hours ago? Vic Fangio is definitely a potential, defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. I think everybody would be over the moon for that kind of a hire, right? An inexperienced head coach with a very experienced defensive coordinator, kind of similar to Sean McVay and Wade Phillips, if you recall that duo that when they started out with the Rams. Hey, maybe even Wade Phillips. Would Wade Phillips be on your radar? Anybody out there in Vikings fan land would be interested in Wade Phillips as a defensive coordinator? I don't know. That's why we're brainstorming. We're trying to figure out who we could potentially hire away. But, let me know what you think about. Is there a quarterbacks coach out there? for another team that maybe is ready to take over as an offensive coordinator, and this would be sort of a good, foot in the door, if you will, because they wouldn't be directly responsible for calling plays. Maybe there's a passing game coordinator out there that I haven't heard of. I was thinking of people like Ken Dorsey, but he, of course, went with Brian Dable to the New York Giants. What do we think about maybe Keenan McCardell being promoted to offensive coordinator? I hope he stays on the staff in whatever role that he is. Wide receiver coach would be great, but could this be an opportunity for Keenan McCardell to get a promotion? I don't know. There's a lot of coordinators out there, but I'm just worried that by the time that Kevin O'Connell takes over, that all of our favorite choices are going to be gone. I don't think Vic Fangio is going to wait a week. I don't think Patrick Graham is going to be swayed to leave the Giants, even though it looks like he's getting offers elsewhere. Who is going to be left? Who is going to be left for the Minnesota Vikings? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there something that maybe there's a diamond in the rough out there that you're aware of? And, it's finally his time. Who are some candidates that you would like to see on this coaching staff hired by Kevin O'Connell? And that's really going to do it for me. I don't really have much comment on the Mike Pettine speculation by Jason La Canfora. He was pretty well respected in Buffalo. I liked him as a head coach for the Cleveland Browns. I don't know if I like him as a defensive coordinator. When he was a defensive coordinator for the Packers, it wasn't good, and he got fired, rightfully so, after they lost in the playoffs. I believe it was 1 or 2 years ago. So not really on board the Mike Pettine train. I would really like Vic Fangio. I'd be happy with Patrick Graham. But those are all really the big names out there. So we have to come up with some ideas about names that probably aren't in the spotlight right now, because we have to wait a week, maybe a week and a half, for this coaching staff to get assembled. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Help with the brainstorm, and that's going to do it for me. As always, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.